At the family dinner, my mother's words cut the room in half. She doesn't belong at this table. Her voice shattered the laughter like shards of glass. Forks dropped. Conversations froze. Every gaze at the long mahogany table turned toward me. My throat ached, but I refused to give her the victory of watching me flinch. My mother, Linda, smirked as though she had landed the perfect strike. Before we dive in, leave a comment with where you're from and which city you're watching from. And when the video ends, tell us honestly, what would you do in this situation? Don't hold back. Share it in the comments below. We read them all. Now let's continue. Haley, my sister, hid a grin behind her champagne glass. My father shifted in his chair, silent as always. My fists clenched the edge of my seat until my knuckles whitened. Then maybe I shouldn't be here, I said, steady, keeping my voice from breaking. I rose slowly, the screech of the chair against the floor booming louder than thunder. No one stopped me. Not a single word. The silence cut deeper than any insult. I walked away, each step weighing like lead, but my head held high. Behind me, the room sprang back to life. Laughter, whispers, glasses clinking, like I had been erased in an instant. But one person didn't join them. My grandfather, Henry Donovan, the oldest at that table but still commanding every room he entered, watched me with sharp blue eyes as I slipped down the hallway. 5 minutes later, I heard the slow shuffle of his cane on the stone path outside. Emily. His voice was low, steady. Don't let them see you cry. I bit my lip, turning toward him, but the tears betrayed me. Grandpa, she humiliated me in front of everyone. My own mother. He stepped closer, his hand landing on my shoulder with unexpected strength. Do you think I don't see it? The way she and Haley try to shove you aside? Do you think I've missed that? I froze. You noticed? His jaw tightened. I notice everything. And tonight, they crossed a line they'll regret. His eyes glinted with something sharp, almost dangerous. Now dry your face. Leave this to me. Before I could answer, he turned and walked back inside, the door shutting behind him with a heavy thud. I trembled on the porch. The next sound wasn't laughter. It was silence. Heavy. Crushing. When I dared to peek through the window, every face at the table had gone pale, eyes wide, as my grandfather stood at the head of the table, speaking words I couldn't hear. But whatever they were, they changed everything. The air inside looked suffocating, pressing against the chest, stealing breath. Even outside, I felt it. The weight of a truth dropped like a stone, rippling through every smug face that had mocked me minutes before. Grandpa Henry stood tall, cane firm on the floor, his voice sharp and unyielding. Shame on all of you, he said, sweeping his gaze across the table until no one dared to move. My mother's smirk collapsed. Haley's glass trembled in her hand. My father shifted, torn between his usual silence and his father's authority. Do you even realize what you've done? You humiliated my granddaughter in front of her family. And for what? To puff up your egos? To act like she is beneath you? His cane struck the wood with a crack that made the younger cousins jump. Let me remind you of something you seem to have forgotten. Emily is the only one who stood by me last year when I was in the hospital. She was the one sitting with me night after night when my heart threatened to fail, when my breath turned shallow, when I thought I would close my eyes forever. Not Linda. Not Haley. Not a single one of you. It was Emily who stayed. His voice faltered for a moment, but the fire in his eyes only grew stronger. His hand trembled as he pointed straight at my mother. You dare say she doesn't belong at this table? Without her, this table wouldn't even stand, because she's the only one who cared enough to be here when it mattered. From the window, tears spilled freely down my cheeks as his words crashed down like hammer blows, tearing apart the false pride and cruel laughter that had filled that room. My mother tried to protest, stammering, "Dad, you don't understand." But he cut her off, cane slamming again, his eyes burning. I understand better than you think. I've watched your cruelty, Linda. The whispers you and Haley spread. The way you've belittled her every chance you got. And I stayed quiet longer than I ever should have. Tonight, I refuse to remain silent. You've cast her out of her own family, and that I cannot forgive. The room froze. No one dared to meet his gaze. Then his next words struck like thunder. If you're so sure Emily doesn't belong here, Let me tell you exactly where she does. She belongs with me. She is my heir. Every ounce of wealth I've built, every share of this family's businesses, every property, it all goes to her. Not to you. Not to Haley. Not to any of you who thought belittling her made you superior. She is the one I trust to carry on my name. Gasps rippled through the room. Haley's glass slipped from her hand, shattering against the floor. My father's face drained of color, and my mother's lips parted as though the ground itself had disappeared beneath her. My cousins exchanged uneasy looks, panic flickering in their eyes, realizing the balance of power had shifted instantly. The same relatives who had laughed when I left the table now sat pale and trembling, stripped of their arrogance. If she has no place at this table, then none of you deserve to sit here either, Grandpa continued, his voice low, sharp, each word like steel. Emily will decide who remains in this family and who doesn't. Tonight I've seen your true faces, and you should all be ashamed. He turned abruptly, his cane striking the floor with each step. The sound of his retreating footsteps echoed louder than the silence he left behind. When the door opened again and he stepped out onto the porch alone, his expression was stern, but his eyes softened as they met mine. "It's done," he said simply, resting his hand on my shoulder in a rare gesture of tenderness. "Let them sit in their shame." I swallowed hard, unable to speak, my heart pounding so violently I thought it might burst from my chest. Inside, the family that had once mocked me sat stunned, their smugness drained away, their pride broken. They realized not only had they underestimated me, but worse, they had underestimated the man who had just handed me everything. For the first time in my life, I was no longer the girl whispered about behind her back, the outsider relegated to the edge of the table. I was the one they feared now, the one they would have to answer to. And the surge of satisfaction that swept through me as the faint murmur of panic rose behind the closed doors was unlike anything I'd ever known. The weight of his words shattered the atmosphere in that dining room. Silence lingered, heavy, the kind where everyone's mind screamed louder than their voices dared. Through the window, I saw Haley's face turn crimson with rage, her fists twisting her napkin until it tore. My mother sat frozen as if struck. My father stared at the wood grain of the table, hollow and lost, while my cousins exchanged nervous glances, calculating which side of this war they ought to take. Grandpa had declared me heir, the one they had mocked, dismissed, and belittled. Their perfect hierarchy crumbled in seconds. And I knew, the moment they found their courage again, their smiles would sharpen into knives. I slipped deeper into the shadows of the porch as whispers finally erupted. Haley's shrill voice sliced through the air. "This is absurd. She's done nothing. She doesn't deserve this. I've been here. I'm the one who earned it." My mother, her pride wounded, snapped in. "Dad, you can't just hand her everything out of pity. She's weak. She's irresponsible." But Grandpa's cane slammed down hard, silencing them even from where I stood. "You will not speak of her that way again," he thundered. The force of his voice made the chandelier above tremble. "You talk of what she deserves. She deserves it all. Because she stood by me when I had nothing to give but dying breaths, while you were too busy drinking champagne and chasing parties." Haley shoved her chair back violently, the screech of the wood against the floor splitting the tension. Her eyes were wild, her voice desperate. "This isn't fair. She's stealing what's mine." And for the first time in my life, I saw fear in her. Not superiority. Fear. Fear that everything she had built her shallow pride on was crumbling in seconds. My father finally spoke, his voice bitter, low. "Emily knows nothing of responsibility. She'll destroy everything." Grandpa's eyes hardened. "Maybe she will stumble, but she will not destroy this family the way your silence already has. You were meant to protect her, and you failed. You all failed." The shame in his words cut deeper than any blade. Tears burned my eyes. Not from sadness this time, but from the vindication I had never dreamed I'd taste. The room erupted in arguments, whispers, clattering silverware. But beneath it all, one truth rang clear. The power was in my hands now. And they knew it. That was when the begging began. My aunt leaned forward, her voice sweet, but dripping with desperation. "Emily is still young, Henry. She doesn't yet grasp how merciless the world can be. Perhaps we can guide her. Maybe Haley could share the burden with her." They could carry it together. But grandfather cut in sharply. You mean rob her the way you've already robbed her dignity? Absolutely not. From this moment on, this family answers to Emily. The panic that rippled through the room was unmistakable. The greedy spark that once lit their eyes turned to raw desperation. Like people trapped in a burning house suddenly realizing I held the only key to escape. My mother rose, smoothing her dress with trembling hands as if to gather back some control. Her voice came out steady, but tightly restrained. Fine, she said. If that's the decision, then we'll accept it. But Emily should not forget what we've done for her. The roof over her head, the years we spent raising her. Her words were sweetened poison, sharp beneath the honeyed tone. And I nearly laughed at the hypocrisy. Grandpa pressed firmly on his cane, his voice calm but unyielding. What you gave her was not love. It was obligation twisted into cruelty. And I won't allow you to weaponize that against her now. The color drained from my mother's face. Haley broke into loud sobs, the kind of staged crying that once fooled everyone, but now only thickened the air with unease. Through the glass, I noticed cousins whispering nervously, some glancing toward the door like they wanted to flee the storm tearing the family apart. And me? I stood frozen on the porch, breath quick and heart pounding like a war drum, realizing for the first time that I wasn't powerless anymore. The same family who treated me like a shadow now had no choice but to watch the spotlight turn squarely on me. Yet in that twisted rush of triumph, something deeper settled in me. This wasn't about money, land, or inheritance. It was about identity, about belonging, about dignity, everything they had tried to strip away from me. And with my grandfather's declaration echoing through the room, they had no choice now but to see me, to fear me, and to brace for a future where the girl they'd shoved to the margins was the only one whose place mattered. My hands shook as I stood in the night air, cool against my skin. But something buried for years beneath their cruelty was finally clawing its way to the surface. When I heard my mother's strained voice and Haley's broken sobs seeping through the door, I knew it was time to stop hiding. I pushed the door open slowly. The groan of its hinges silenced the room faster than any shout could, every head snapping toward me. Not at the invisible daughter they used to dismiss, but at a presence they could no longer ignore. My mother's lips parted, her face a mix of fear and fury, but no words came. Haley's tear-streaked cheeks burned as she glared at me as if I were the thief who had stolen her crown. My father avoided my eyes, shifting uneasily in his chair. My cousins stared wide-eyed, as though they were witnessing something impossible. Grandfather didn't even look at me, he didn't have to. His earlier words still thundered in the air behind me, steadying me, pushing me forward. I stepped slowly, each footfall loud in the heavy silence. When I reached the table, I didn't return to the empty chair I'd left earlier. Instead, I stood tall at the head beside my grandfather, my voice calm yet cutting. You wanted me gone, I said, sweeping my eyes across them. For years you made me feel like an outsider, like I didn't matter, like my silence proved you could walk over me. But look at you now. Look at your faces as you realize the power you thought was yours is now mine. My mother's fists clenched, her nails digging into her palms. She hissed through gritted teeth. You're still just a child. You don't understand how this family works. But her voice trembled with fear. I leaned in slightly, meeting her gaze with a strength I never knew I had. No, Mom, I said firmly. I understand exactly how this family works. It thrives on humiliation. It survives by tearing down those who don't play by your rules. And all this time you mistook my silence for weakness. That ends tonight. Haley slammed her hand on the table, rage twisting her tears into fury. You can't do this. Everything was supposed to be mine. You've always been nothing, she screamed. For a moment, pity stirred in me. But then I remembered every sneer, every cruel laugh, every whispered word meant to cut me down. And the pity hardened into steel. Maybe I was nothing to you, I said, my voice sharp as glass. But that's only because you needed me to be nothing, so you could feel like everything. That illusion is gone, Haley. You don't get to define me anymore. The room buzzed with unbearable tension. My cousins fidgeted, restless. My aunt and uncle kept their eyes on their plates as if the truth was too hot to face. My father's jaw tightened, words forming but dying before they could leave his mouth. Finally, grandfather tapped his cane once, his voice low but final. You've heard her. This is not up for debate. And with those words, everything shifted. The family who once mocked me now sat silent, crushed under the weight of their loss, while I stood taller than ever. No longer the girl told she didn't belong at the table, now the woman who was the table itself. The foundation they would have to bow to if they wanted a place in the future.